Today, top Trump immigration officials were grilled by Democrats on the House Homeland Security Committee in the first DHS oversight hearing since the shooting deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Here is Congressman Dan Goldman with Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons.
You said in your opening statement that references to ICE as the Gestapo or the secret police encourages threats against ICE agents.
100%.
The problem is you have it backwards, sir. People are simply making valid observations about your tactics, which are un-American and outright fascist. So I have a simple suggestion. If you don't want to be called a fascist regime or secret police, then stop acting like one.
Congressman Dan Goldman of New York joins us now.
Welcome to the table, Congressman. So, I thought there were a number of significant moments in today's hearing, and you were among the highlights of those moments, as we just illustrated, really narrowing down and focusing the truth back to this administration. The country is responding the way it's responding to your ICE agents and your behavior because of your behavior, because of their behavior. And I thought that was fundamentally important to put up in an important way. The other aspect of this that I thought was interesting was when you have that moment when a government official is asked if a U.S. citizen deserves to die. Mm-hmm. And he can't answer that question. Mm-hmm. He refuses to answer that question. What was your take from what you observed from your questioning and from your colleagues' questioning today about the responses of this administration to their fascist behavior?
Well, it unquestionably starts from the top, and that's Donald Trump, and that's Stephen Miller, and that gets to then down to Kristi Noem. But it doesn't stop there. They're all infected with this same lawlessness, this same authoritarian view that somehow, some way, whatever they need to do to meet Stephen Miller's quotas is perfectly fine to do. And that we are going to make American citizens show us their citizenship paper. I mean, what preceded that excerpt is me asking him and him admitting that the other regimes who would force their people to show their citizenship papers were Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. And that's not what this country is about. And then for them to project and deflect by saying, oh, we have to wear masks because of all these threats, it's like, well, you wouldn't have all these threats to the extent you do, and the data is not at all clear.
It's dubious.
If you would follow the law and the Constitution and stop barging into people's homes without warrants and stop ripping people out of their cars after breaking the window. There's no professional law enforcement agency, criminal law enforcement agency that would ever act this way, ever. And this is civil immigration enforcement, often against people protesting.
Mm-hmm. Public service should have a face. It's just that simple. There's a reason when you cast your vote, you don't cast your vote anonymously. You cast it with your name next to it, so your constituents can either thank you or hold you responsible for that vote. And I think it is rare that you have a moment like this where you both are using your capacity in these committee hearings to bring these folks to the Hill for the purpose of oversight. But you also have this pending funding fight where you can actually use that lever of power to make changes to these institutions. It's telling to me, Leader Jeffries was on earlier with our colleague Katy Tur. It doesn't sound like you guys are close at all on this because Republicans don't actually want to change anything. The list of things they didn't want to change. They don't want to change detention. They don't want to prohibit those ICE agents from wearing masks. They don't want to do independent investigations. I mean, how are you supposed to negotiate with a White House that is basically saying the status quo is working?
Right, and it's all intertwined because the fact that they are wearing masks is very clearly, and that's what I was getting at with Director Lyons today, it's very clearly designed to avoid accountability. And so if they're not known and their face is not out there, they feel unaccountable and invincible. That feeling is then dramatically increased when the president and the Secretary of Homeland Security immediately start calling the victims of murders domestic terrorists. And the FBI says, no, we're not even going to investigate these shootings, and we're going to keep the state out. So you have these lawless, secret police who have been militarized and using excessive force, knowing that they can go around masked without any transparency, and that they're invincible because there's no accountability. So that's why it's so dangerous, and that is the definition of fascism.
I think the masks are extremely important, but Acting Director Lyons, he was very clear today. He was asked would he commit to unmasking the agents, and he answered with one word and said no. So if that's what the director is saying, I'm sure the director was prepped on what to say. The former comms person in me is like, he went through a prep before you go into a contentious hearing. If it seems as though the White House and DHS are also not budging on the masks, is this a sticking point for you all? Are you willing to go to the for the masks?
I will say, from my perspective, the masks are the bare minimum.
Yeah.
I believe that I don't know how I would support a bill if Kristi Noem is still the Secretary of Homeland Security. And I think you guys just had a really interesting conversation with Mark Elias. I have an amendment that would prohibit the DHS from seizing voter rolls, from seizing voting machines, which is what Trump tried to do in 2020 with an executive order, because that's what this is all gearing up for. When you have Pam Bondi shaking down Tim Walz and saying, give us your voter rolls and your ballots, and then we'll take ICE out, you know that's what they're targeting. And so these are things that I think are very important. Some of the other stuff is just simply follow the law. I mean, the Fourth Amendment prohibits them to do a search of a home without a judicial warrant. It's very simple. And so a number of these other issues are just simply follow the law or enforce the law. We should not have to pass another law to say follow the law.